The night was quiet in a way that felt heavy, like the world was holding its breath. A mother sat alone at a kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a chipped mug of cold tea, staring at nothing. She had done everything she knew how to do. Now, all she had left was faith, and 2 small drops that didn't look like they could change anything at all. No one could have guessed that by morning, those 2 drops would set off a chain of kindness so powerful that it would touch strangers, heal old wounds, and leave an entire community changed forever. Before we begin, if stories like this warm your heart and remind you of the good still living quietly among us, take a moment to subscribe, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments. This is Kindness Story Hub, and your support helps these stories reach the people who need them most. The story begins in a small town in Ohio, the kind of place where everyone knows the high school mascot but still locks their doors at night. Maria Thompson had lived there her whole life. She was a single mother, raising her 8-year-old son, Caleb, in a modest yellow house with creaky floors and a mailbox that leaned a little to the left. Maria worked 2 jobs. During the day, she cleaned rooms at a local motel off the highway. At night, she stocked shelves at a grocery store. It wasn't the life she imagined when she was younger, but it was honest work, and she was proud of that. What kept her going was Caleb. His laugh. His questions. The way he still reached for her hand when crossing the street. But lately, something was wrong. Caleb had been tired all the time. Not the normal tired of a growing kid, but the kind that made his eyes dull and his steps slow. He stopped wanting to play outside. He stopped finishing his favorite peanut butter sandwiches. One afternoon, Maria found him asleep on the living room floor, still holding a toy car. That scared her. Doctor visits followed. Blood tests. Long waits in cold rooms with posters of smiling cartoon organs on the walls. Finally, a diagnosis came, wrapped in medical words that felt sharp and heavy. Caleb needed treatment. Treatment cost money. Money Maria didn't have. She tried to stay strong in front of her son. She smiled when he smiled. She told him stories at night and promised everything would be okay. But when he slept, Maria cried quietly into her pillow so he wouldn't hear. One night, after a particularly hard day, Maria opened an old box she kept in the closet. Inside were small things from her past, a faded photo of her parents, a hospital bracelet from when Caleb was born, and a tiny bottle of oil. The bottle had been given to her years ago by her grandmother, a woman of deep faith who believed kindness and prayer could move mountains. "You won't need much," her grandmother had said. "Just 2 drops, and a heart that believes." Maria had never used it before. Life had a way of making people practical instead of hopeful. But that night, with bills stacked on the counter and fear pressing on her chest, Maria held the bottle in her shaking hands. She placed 2 drops on her fingertips and gently touched Caleb's forehead as he slept. She whispered a prayer. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't perfect. It was just a mother asking the universe, God, anyone listening, to help her child. The next morning, Maria went to work at the motel as usual. She scrubbed sinks, changed sheets, and smiled politely at guests who barely noticed her. In one room, she found a wallet left behind on the dresser. It was thick, filled with cash and cards. For a moment, a brief, human moment, she thought of Caleb. Of the bills. Of how easy it would be to just take some and no one would know. But Maria closed the wallet and turned it into the front desk. The wallet belonged to a man named Daniel Harris, a traveling salesman who had been rushing to make a meeting. When he returned to the motel in a panic, expecting the worst, he was stunned to find everything untouched. He asked who had found it. When the manager pointed to Maria, Daniel thanked her again and again. She nodded politely, embarrassed by the attention. As he walked away, something tugged at him. He turned back and asked, "Can I do something for you? At least buy you lunch?" Maria hesitated, then shook her head. "Just pass it on," she said softly. That should have been the end of it. But kindness rarely stops where we expect. Later that day, Daniel couldn't stop thinking about Maria. About the way she looked tired but honest. About her simple request. He called his sister, who worked for a local nonprofit that helped families with medical expenses. Meanwhile, back at home, Maria noticed something strange. Caleb was sitting at the table, eating a full bowl of cereal. When she asked how he felt, he smiled and said, "Better, Mom. I had a really good dream." Over the next few days, small things began to shift. A neighbor dropped off a casserole by accident. The school called to say a fundraiser had been started in Caleb's name. Maria received a phone call from the nonprofit, asking about her son. When she asked how they'd found her, the woman on the line said, "Someone told us about an honest mother with a big heart." Doctor appointments followed. New tests. Careful smiles from nurses. Then came words Maria had barely dared to imagine. Caleb was responding better than expected. His condition was improving faster than anyone predicted, and news traveled fast in the small town. People who had never spoken to Maria before began waving, leaving gift cards in her mailbox, writing notes that said things like, "We're praying for you," and "You're not alone." One evening, Maria stood in her kitchen, watching Caleb laugh as he chased the dog around the yard. The sun dipped low, painting everything gold. She held the small bottle of oil in her hand again, realizing it wasn't magic. It never was. The real power had been faith paired with kindness. A choice to do the right thing when it was hard. A simple act that rippled outward in ways no one could plan. Months later, Caleb returned to school full-time. Maria cut back to one job. Life wasn't perfect, but it was lighter. Stronger. At a town gathering that fall, the mayor spoke about community. About how one honest act had reminded everyone who they wanted to be. Maria stood at the back, holding Caleb's hand, tears in her eyes. She never told many people about the 2 drops. She didn't need to. The outcome spoke for itself, because sometimes, kindness begins in the quietest moments. In kitchens at night. In small choices no one is watching. And when faith meets compassion, the results can be more powerful than anyone expects. So if you're wondering whether your small act matters, whether returning a wallet, offering a meal, or whispering a hopeful prayer can really change anything, remember this story. You never know how far 2 drops of kindness can travel.